Hello, guys. Thank you for listening to the I Hope to Hear This podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Miss Irene Wong. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to shout outs to Pastor David for connecting us and introducing us. And yeah, I think we're going to be talking about something very significant today. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, David.
Yeah. If you don't mind, before we get into kind of the meat of the conversation, just kind of introduce yourself, like who you are, what you do, and we can talk about kind of the event, if I can call it that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my full name is Irene Wong. Mm-hmm. I grew up in New York City. My parents were immigrants, Chinese from China. My mother came from Hong Kong, and before that, China when she was 16. My dad was born in Brooklyn, New York, and his family immigrated from China. Before that, they were laundry workers, and my mom's family came from restaurant workers. So I consider myself third generation Chinese American. Mm-hmm. We attended a Chinese church in Chinatown, New York. Mm-hmm. Many fond memories. Sundays, we're at church all day, so I was very active in church and Sunday school, youth group, and it really, it gave me a great foundation in the faith, and it introduced me to Jesus, and I was baptized there. Went to college, went to Brown in Rhode Island, and was involved with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And InterVarsity was really integral in my faith. It just taught me how to have a relationship with Jesus, helped me fall in love with Bible study. It just trained me in so many ways in discipleship and leadership. So when I graduated from college, I joined InterVarsity staff first as a volunteer. I did spend a year teaching English in China, and that was my year to explore missions versus ministry in the U.S. and felt called to student ministry, came back and joined InterVarsity staff, which I did for 10 years in Rhode Island, 8 years in Rhode Island, but in 2000 was invited to come to Atlanta, Georgia, to staff ACF at Emory University.
Okay.
And so I came to Atlanta to work at Emory in 2000 for 2 years, which was a wonderful experience, and loved it. Was involved at the Atlanta Chinese Christian Church where I met my husband, William Wong. But before we got married, I felt called to go to seminary. So I left Atlanta to go to Fuller Theological Seminary, which I also felt called to do, finish my MDiv. In 2 years full-time, I had started it. So I got my MDiv. While I was there, I interned at Evergreen Baptist Church, Ken Fong's church. So been really influenced by him and his ministry of being an Asian American church. And Fuller was a wonderful experience. So graduated in 2004, got married, moved back to Atlanta. I found a position at the Atlanta Taiwanese Presbyterian Church. I was the EM pastor there for 3 years, from 2005 to 2008. We started having children. So my daughters were born, the first one and then the second one, and then I decided to step down from ministry. So I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years, which I loved. We have 3 girls who are now 16. I have to think about this, 16, 14, and 11. So that's been a privilege. So stay-at-home mom for 8 years. We started going to North Avenue Presbyterian Church in Midtown because I had already started the ordination process at the Taiwanese church and wanted to stay in a Presbyterian church. We're PCUSA, and my husband grew up in that, so it's been a great fit for us. It helped us grow spiritually, and I continued the ordination process, stayed in it, and in, 2017, I looked for ministry opportunity and became the executive director of AMI, the Atlanta Ministry with International Students.
Oh, okay.
So I was ordained to that ministry in 2018. So I am a Presbyterian minister, Word and Sacrament, serve a lot in my church, North Avenue, as well as other Presbyterian churches around. Our ministry was founded by a Presbyterian pastor, and so we have lots of relationships with Presbyterian churches in Atlanta, but as well as churches of other denominations as well. So our ministry is to welcome international students to Atlanta and connect them with local American friends.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
we support students at Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Emory, Kennesaw State, 15 colleges and universities around Atlanta, mostly metro Atlanta. Wow. So it's been a wonderful ministry. I've enjoyed it. It's been challenging. It's given me many opportunities to serve in the campuses, to meet international students, but also build a community with our many volunteers.
If you don't mind, I thought of so many questions as you were going through your intro.
Sure.
The first question, you mentioned you're a third generation Chinese American. Me as a second generation Korean American, having 2 daughters, I always wondered like what it would be like for them to grow up with parents who are second generation. I wonder if you can give me a little bit of insight into that, like how it was. Like, did you feel anything different about your father who kind of, he, as a second generation Asian American, I understand that we're kind of stuck between 2 cultures and there is always a battle of how am I going to raise my child? More in this culture or more in that? Did you ever feel that kind of tension with your father and your parents, or?
Well, the main thing is I didn't speak Chinese. My father didn't speak Chinese to at least to us. My mother tried to speak Cantonese to us, but we responded in English, of course. And so I understand, and I did take some Chinese in college. I mean, I think we grew up in the Chinese church, so we were pretty connected to Chinese culture, and our family was there. So growing up with all the traditions and Chinese New Year and eating Chinese food, it was pretty easy to stay connected to our Chinese culture. So I feel that, I did grow up pretty close in an immigrant family. But now raising kids who are in Atlanta, and my husband is also Chinese American, like me. His parents were immigrants. But it's always a challenge to introduce, our kids to Asian and Chinese and Asian American culture and keep them connected and keep them visiting our family, which is not in Atlanta. But it's important for us to keep talking about our Chinese American heritage and our family, and to tell them stories about our family. That's really important to us, and I think that's the way we keep them connected.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because I'm thinking, my parents live. Actually, I don't know if you saw her. My mom's actually downstairs looking after my second baby.
Okay.
Right, downstairs. So I do have these touch points. But I always wondered, is that something they would want? Like, do they want to be still connected to like their Korean heritage?
I think so.
Okay.
I think everybody wants to know where they're from, and their family stories are so important for children to know, and to know where they come from and to be proud of their background. I think that's really important to keep them connected to their family heritage.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, thank you for that. And you mentioned you went to China to teach English for a year. So kind of what were the revelations that you had when you were pondering the question, missions versus like ministry?
Yes. Well, personally, it was a really good experience for me, just to see myself in the majority and to blend into the crowd and to have that experience, you know, because growing up as Asian American here, you're always viewed as other or different, and just to have that experience of being on the other side of the world, that was big for me. And then in terms of my own calling, it just felt like it just became clear to me through my passions. Like I loved being there and exploring the culture, but I really felt like I could do more as an Asian American in the U.S. and with student ministry, and just felt called to student ministry. And then since when I came back to campus ministry, felt called to international student ministry. So always being that bridge person, being bicultural or multicultural, that's really, you know, something that God has used even in my current ministry with international students.
Yeah. So how does that work? Is it international students that come for international studies, they'll like reach out to you guys, or do you guys kind of like seek them out, or?
Yeah. Well, AMI, Atlanta Ministry with International Students, AMI is the French word for friends. We operate like a nonprofit and we have partnerships with the colleges and universities. So we are in partnership with the international student offices. And so we offer our programs and events, and we're a resource to international students when they come to Georgia Tech or Georgia State. So whatever they're studying, they could be getting their master's in engineering, and most of them are STEM majors.
Right.
they can sign up for our welcome reception or events or what we call an Amigo International Friendship Partner. So we have a program that connects an international student with a local friend in the community, because when you're an international student, it's so hard to meet people outside of campus. So we connect them through our website, and then the staff in our office do the connecting. So we also recruit volunteers to be friends with the international students. So they find out about us through the school.
Right. That's so great, because I know I graduated Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So I know there are a ton of international
There are.
students there. So yeah, that's awesome that there's someone there to kind of connect them to the people around Atlanta.
That's right. Yeah, we've been a resource for international students for over 40 years.
Yeah,
So
wow,
have a great long time history and tradition of being in the community.
And lastly, I know you mentioned you were a stay-at-home mom for 8 years.
Yes.
By the way, that's amazing. I mean, hats off to all stay-at-home moms. I think they don't get the recognition that they deserve, because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and just kind of looking at my life, all the support that she was able to give because she was there all the time. It's I mean, I wouldn't be the person I am today without her, you know? So like, yeah, the fact that I don't, for my mom, I don't know if she had a choice. She didn't really have a career. I think she always just wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. But having to make the choice between, like career and stay-at-home mom, I'm sure it's not an easy decision. But the fact that you did that for 8 years, I think I commend you. And I'm sure your daughters are super appreciative that you did that.
I'm glad I could do it. It was a real privilege, and I'm glad my husband would support me in doing it. I mean, so working in a church, and when I was the EM director at Atlanta Taiwanese Presbyterian Church, and it's a wonderful, wonderful community, having to preach every Sunday, that was a real challenge. And so my husband would work during the week because he's in finance, and then I would be working on the weekends, preparing for Sundays and then Sunday. And so it was just really rough on the family. And so I just felt like it was better for our family to take a break from that schedule, and for me to step out of ministry. And there'll be seasons when God will call me back to ministry, and there's ministry that I can do now, having children in the home and also being able to work when they're at school, or when now they're a little more independent. So
but no, I know my wife, she works, but she recently got off of her maternity leave. And she always just says, I don't know if it's like easier to be on maternity leave, because like just being home, just having to watch the kids all the time, it's not an easy task. It's not a vacation from work. So
it's a full-time job.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
So Irene, I know when we first connected, you wanted to talk about an event, and I had to be honest, I had forgotten about it. So kind of the name of the event, Renew and Remember.
Remember and Renew.
Sorry. Remember and Renew, was like striking to me, because I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. Like I can't believe we were only 1 year removed from this event. But can you kind of explain to me what the event is and what we're trying to remember?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a year ago on March 16th. When the Asian spa shootings happened. There was a shooter that came from Cherokee County, and I'm sorry, I need to refresh my memory on the details, but he went to the Asian spas in Cherokee County and shot some of the workers and some of those who were in the business, and then he went to Atlanta and went to the Gold Spa and shot a few more Asian business owner workers who were in the spa and those who were around. And forgive me for not being refreshed in the details, but there were a total of 8 people killed, and 6 of them were Asian women who were spa workers and owners. And the tragedy, it was a tragedy that had happened in Atlanta. It was a tragedy that he shot and directed violence towards Asian women. And it's a tragedy that it happened. But what was also sad to me was that he claimed to be a Christian and was a member of a church in Cherokee County. And the church has since disavowed him, but he was, someone who was very involved and active in his church. So it was a tragedy on many counts. Yeah. But this event just evoked so many feelings for many of us in the Asian American community. One, that we were targeted, and Asian Americans have been increasingly targeted especially since the start of the COVID pandemic. And there's a website organization called Stop AAPI Hates that has been documenting anti-Asian violence since 2019 or 2020, since the start of the pandemic, and those numbers have been on the rise. And we've been seeing it, hearing it on the news, where Asians have been targeted and been called names related to the COVID, or, the China virus, and Asians being attacked and told to go back to China or Asia, and so we've seen this, and so it touched a point for all of us, for many of us in Atlanta, that had happened in our community, in the neighborhood. And for those of us who are Christians, it was particularly shocking because the attacker was a so-called Christian brother. And so we just felt like we had to respond. And personally, I just felt like I needed to say something or do something in response to it as an Asian American woman, Christian ministry leader. And I was invited a year ago to participate in a rally that was being planned to respond to the events, the Atlanta spot shootings, by David Park. And there were several pastors who felt like we should do this, and there was an outside organization, Asian American Christian Coalition, who wanted to come to Atlanta to do this event, and they were also doing similar rallies in other cities around the U.S. So it was like a national response by Asian American Christians. So it was really exciting that we were going to do something. It happened in a week. The team was just amazing. David Park was our leader, but he and others felt like we need to involve Asian American women in the planning. It needs to be primarily about Asian American women responding to this, and they rightly saw that we need to involve Asian American women on the planning team and on stage, and they brought in me and several others from different churches around Atlanta to be involved in the planning of this. And it was pretty amazing. David was an amazing leader. He was, we had Zoom meetings, 12 o'clock and 5 o'clock, on the same days. And the things just happened very quickly. And different churches came together. Perimeter, I think, offered the stage. They brought the stage. We had the worship team. We got all the volunteers, the porta potties, and it was on the Kmart, the old Kmart shopping lot on Beaufort Highway. And so that space was donated, and there was security. And so it was just an amazing event. I mean, I really felt that God was in it, and it was an act of God to see it come together. And the event happened, and hundreds of people came, and the speakers were heartfelt and amazing. And, we had speakers from the Asian American Christian community, many pastors. It was just really huge. I mean, I just felt like it was spirit-filled, and it was coming together to the community to say, this is not right, and we need to come together as a community to speak out against this, to stand against anti-Asian hate, to speak up for Asian Americans, and do it as a Christian community. And it was significant for me too, because I was invited to speak, and it was just a moment for me where I just felt like God was affirming my calling to ministry, like that God had given me a voice to speak for him. But I've my whole life been afraid of using it, and if hidden, as an Asian American woman, I don't volunteer. I'm like, other people can do it. I don't need to speak or minister. And I've really struggled with my calling to ministry. I mean, I really feel like it wasn't mine. It's God's the one who's called me to be a minister and a pastor. And I've always felt like, I don't need to do this. I don't want to do this. I have no models of anybody who's done this for me. And when I was a stay-at-home mom, that was my Moses in the wilderness experience. Like, I'm happy raising my little lambs, my children at home, and I don't need to go back into ministry. But, God's called me, and that event was a pivotal moment for me where I felt like God saying, I've called you to speak into ministry, and I want you to use your voice. And so from then on, I've just felt like that was my moment. I don't know, fire in the bush sort of moment. From like then on, it's okay, I know I'm called to ministry, so I'm going to speak when God gives me opportunity. So I haven't questioned my calling or question using my voice since. So it was really significant for me personally.
Wow.
So over the year, I've just been praying about that event, and then what should we do this year, and what should our next steps be. Mm-hmm. And so the planning committee has continued to meet a few times by Zoom, and we've invited folks who were there to participate. And so we've had conversations, what should we do next? What should our next steps be? Mm-hmm. And one thing that the event showed us was that we responded to the Asian spa shootings like it was a reaction. This happened, and so we're like, okay, we have to do something, we have to meet. But it was all thrown together, and so there wasn't much forethought to it. Mm-hmm. It was a response. And so this year we felt like, okay, let's try to be more intentional about our gatherings and to come together to encourage each other, to strengthen each other, to remember what happened, but also to be more proactive in our response. Yeah. So to come up with a community or a space for Asian American Christians to gather and to express our voices, to tell our stories, and to express our God-given image and voices and the ways that God has called us to live and respond and work and be, in our community. Let's be more intentional about that. Yeah. So that's where the Remember and Renew has come to be. So at the end of last year, I started talking and reaching out to Asian American pastors and ministry leaders, men and women in Atlanta, different denominations, PCA, PCUSA, Baptist, Methodist, anybody, non-denominational folks, and just say, we're Asian American, we're Christian, let's come together to, it could be this event, but also let's be more intentional in our relationships with one another. Mm-hmm. Let's not be so separated and siloed in our communities and our different church communities. And let's, when something happens like this, let's be able to come together and speak with one voice, or be able to be more connected so we can support each other when tragedies happen, but also that we can build each other up in our ministries and calls and the places that God has put us in.
Yeah. That's amazing, because the heartbeat of this podcast is also to kind of amplify and to share Asian American stories. Yeah. It something you mentioned kind of early on in the podcast is like Asian American, you always feel kind of like an other. So you almost feel disqualified sometimes to share your stories and to speak up. But yeah, the fact that we're trying to, gather everybody together to, really amplify that, I think that's amazing. That's great. Yeah. And one thing that I found interesting when you were talking about this is you mentioned Perimeter Church donated the stage for the first event. That's because Perimeter Church is a huge Caucasian church, and so the fact that they kind of also were in the mix is amazing to me, because that really I don't know, I always have this thought that the Asian American church is one thing, the broader American church is another. They never really mingle. But the fact that even they were hey, let us help you, that kind of gave me chills.
That was amazing too. I mean, and actually, I didn't know this, but Perimeter Church has a lot of Asian Americans there right now. And Jimmy Kim is on staff there, and he was our connection for the event. And he's still on our connection for this event. And I hope he will speak at this coming event in March 27th. But we had offers from Passion City Church to use the parking lot, and many churches were supportive. And actually, we had Be the Bridge, Latasha Morrison. She spoke at that event a year ago. And also Josh Clemens with One Race. And we're also talking with him, and hopefully he'll come this year as well and speak this year. So we found lots of support from the community. And we also had lots of allies who were at the event on Beaufort Highway last year who just came out in support of the Asian American Christian community. And even on our mailing list since then, we've had many allies who are saying they want to support us and come and help and be
awesome. There. So kind of going back to the spa shooting, I wonder, and I asked this very carefully, I wonder if I can ask you kind of about how that event made you feel, kind of your reaction to it. And I ask you because you are an Asian American woman, you have you're raising three Asian American girls. So I'm sure, because for me, I'll kind of share my reaction first. I have a wife. I have two girls. At the time, it was just one, but we knew another girl was on the way. My mother lives here. So when that event happened, it was almost surreal to me because it was really crazy because the night before, I recorded a podcast with a friend, Jane Mo, or Jane Pack now. She's a journalist, and we were talking about the rise of anti-Asian American hate or Asian American hate, kind of that's spreading across the country. And I remember us talking about it and saying, man, if we don't really kind of speak out against this, like something worse is going to happen. Right now, it's just people getting assaulted on the street. And that's already tragic, but something big is going to happen if we don't really like put our foot down. And the fact that that happened the day after, I was almost like, is this real life?
Yeah.
And immediately after that surrealness had settled, like I was like calling my mom, like telling her like, hey, like don't go to places by yourself. Like if you need to go like anywhere like shady, like let me know, I'll go for you. Like I was talking to my wife, just the protective instinct of a son, father, husband like was on overdrive because
Yeah.
at the time there was so little information that had come out. And like it's even after the information had come out, it was like, oh, it was a targeted attack on people who look like my mother, who look like my wife. So it was, I was just on high alert for a few weeks after that. It was like draining on my part, but I was like, man, I can't imagine what my mom or what my wife are feeling. So,
Oh, sure.
yeah, for you, how did you kind of respond and take that in?
Right. Yes. Thanks for asking. I mean, I think to see Asian women targeted, it just touched on us because it felt like it could be our moms, our aunties, sisters, friends who were Asian American. It just felt like, what, someone in our community who looks like one of us, and it could be one of us next, was targeted. And so it was really personal. And I think as Asian Americans, we feel this collective sense of this is our community. And so this, target was targeting one of us, and therefore we're being targeted. So yeah, it was really personal. I mean, it was really, and I just felt like I needed to speak out. And also because the Asian women being targeted, it also touches on stereotypes of Asian women being exotic or docile or silent, or how Asian women have been portrayed in the media, exoticized, but also they're used, they're sexual objects. And also because they were targeted in this Asian spa industry, there was innuendos or about that. So it was personal. I felt like I needed to speak out about it, and spoke about it in my church, and taught about Asian American history of anti-Asian violence, and spoke out in the community even before this event at some neighborhood gatherings. And so I just felt like if we don't say something, people are just, we need to identify the stereotypes and the ways Asian women have been targeted and silenced and viewed as outsiders. And we need to say something. And so I just felt like it was like a call for me to speak about it. Yeah.
What was the response from the people around you at the time? Did you get
there was lots of support. I mean, I just felt lots of support from my community in Smyrna, from our church. It's a majority white church with really trying to be intentional about racial reconciliation and affirming of people from all races and all over the world. So I felt affirmed in my church and support, and I felt support, from everyone. So yeah, I just felt like the community was supportive and understood, and especially the Christian community.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame that it takes such a tragic event to kind of see all the people that are supportive around you. But I think if like you had to pull a silver lining out of the situation. Maybe that's one of them. It's hard to say that statement, but yeah, I too have felt that support. Yeah, from people who I hadn't talked to in a while. They would reach out and say, "Hey, like I'm just thinking about you and your family."
Right.
Yeah, so that was the support really was
Yeah,
amazing.
I had that too. Friends reach out to me on Facebook or text who are non-Asian and Asian, but just to say, I'm thinking about you. I'm sorry this happened.
Yeah.
And so it did bring us together as a community in response. And I feel like, yes, it called us together. And so I hope that we continue leaning on each other and supporting each other and not being isolated. And COVID has just made us isolated the last 2 years. Being home and churches meeting online and I know churches are struggling right now. So I really want this Remember and Renew event to encourage the Asian American Christians and Asian American churches, but Asian Americans wherever they are, whether they're in Asian churches, ethnic churches, EM ministries, or non-Asian churches or majority white churches. I just want everybody to be encouraged and supportive and feel like coming together is a way that God calls us into community, and we experience God's Holy Spirit love and grace by coming to an event where we can encourage one another and seeing each other and seeing that we're here for each other, seeing the image of God reflected in each other, hearing Asian American stories told from the stage, and hearing God speak into that is something that I hope will encourage our Asian American community and churches.
Yeah. So can we start talking about the specifics of the event? When it is, where it is.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah. Yes, it's going to be on Sunday, March 27th, Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. It's going to be in the Peachtree Ridge High School parking lot. We felt that when we planned it, we still needed to do it outdoors just because people would feel safer outdoors, but it's a large space in the parking lot, and one of our planning team members is on staff there, so it's been a great location. So we have that support the community, and there's lots of Asian Americans in that community. So it's going to be at Peachtree Ridge High School, March 27th, 4 p.m., and we're planning a program of an hour speakers to remember the event, so they will be just kind of reflecting on what happened. There'll be worship, there'll be a moment of silence, time for prayers, reflecting on that event, maybe prayers in different Asian languages. And then there's going to be a time to reflect and to renew ourselves and our commitment to honor God, to serve God, and respond with God, Jesus being central in going forward from this. So taking this and moving forward, renewing ourselves in our faith and our relationship with Jesus, and hearing his word that he encourages us to go forth and be who God made us to be, fully Asian American and Christian, followers of Jesus in the communities, the workplaces, schools, churches that God has called us to.
Yeah.
So to not be embarrassed, but to be encouraged and supported and strengthened by each other. So the program is an hour, and then we'll have a time of fellowship, food and fellowship. We received a grant from Stop AAPI Hates grants administered by CPAC, so we're grateful for that. So we do have some funding, which we'll use for the event, and some food. And the idea is we want people to stick around and talk to each other and to have fellowship with one another. But also what we hope for is that churches and ministries and nonprofits will have tables there so we can share information about our different churches and ministries and nonprofits where we can get involved and use our voices and serve the community and just be making a difference because of our faith in Christ. So we hope to have that time of fellowship and information sharing and gathering.
Yeah.
So organizations are invited to have a table there, share information, and just be there to talk to people.
And this is an awkward question,
yes.
But is it mainly for Asian Americans, or are like people of any race welcome? Like, what is the focal point, I guess?
Yes, that's a great question. So we're calling it Remember and Renew a gathering with Asian American Christians in Atlanta. So it's a gathering with. So it means those who are the speakers on the stage will be Asian American. It'll be Asian American stories and perspectives and prayers. And Christians, the focus is on Jesus. But it's open to all the community. And so if anybody wants to gather with us, they're welcome. And we do expect there will be some non-Asians who are members of our community friends, and they're all are welcome.
Yeah.
So all are welcome, but just know it is a gathering planned for, by, and with Asian Americans. So it's just a unique opportunity, I think, to express our Asian American stories, faith in an Asian American way, and just be together in ourselves and be ourselves without shame and just be who God made us to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned it's in the parking lot, but I'm thinking about the school, and there's several parking lots. Do you know which one?
Yes. Well, I'm actually headed to the school this afternoon. We're going to determine that this afternoon. And I'm sure we'll have volunteers who will be guiding the way. So just go to Peachtree Ridge High School. So there'll be signs and volunteers to guide us.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Just because, I was thinking my wife went there. And so there's like a parking lot in the back. There's like 2 in the front. But yeah, that's great. Yes. So just if you are listening and you want to attend, you don't need to worry yourself with the specifics of which parking lot. Just drive in to the school, and I'm sure you'll be directed to the proper location.
That's right.
Any kind of last thoughts on that you want to share?
Yes, I do want to share that we don't want this to be just one event. And then we are talking about having other gatherings for Asian American Christians in Atlanta and, continuing this network. So we've sort of calling ourselves the Asian American Christian Network of Atlanta. I mean, if anyone has a better name, let me know. But I mean, just to say we want to be connected to one another and perhaps offer these events later where we can tell Asian American stories. So one thing we do want to do, and we are planning to do, is a May AIPI History and Heritage Month events. That's May is Asian American History and Heritage Month. And so we are going to, loosely, we haven't planned the details, but we're planning for May 15th, a gathering at Korean Central Presbyterian Church. Okay. So this is kind of more in town near Peachtree Industrial, or right under the perimeter. And we hope to hear from an Asian American seminary professor and American church historian, Dr. William Yu, who teaches at Columbia Theological Seminary. And he'll be talking to us about Asian Americans in American Christian history, kind of our role. There's so much, so it's going to be hard. But what I really am excited for him to talk about is to tell us about our history in American church history and sort of give some overviews or understandings of that, but also to talk to us about who are our heroes in Asian American Christian history, like who are our Rosa Parks or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., like who can we look up to, as heroes in Asian American Christian history. So he's going to be there March 15th, and we've talked about this.
May 15th?
I'm sorry,
yeah,
yes.
Okay.
May 15th, okay. Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. Thank you. May 15th, May's busy, so that's like the only Sunday that's not Mother's Day or graduation weekend. So I know May's just busy, but May 15th, Sunday afternoon at 4, the idea is like there'd be at 4 o'clock, there'd be a program an hour long, and then 5 o'clock there'd be fellowship, food and fellowship somehow. So Korean Central Presbyterian Church has offered their space to host us. So we're excited. Hopefully we can do it indoors, but they do have large fellowship halls where we can, gather around tables and have conversations. So all are invited to that. Mark your calendars. And if you sign up for our events on our Google form, if you fill out the Google form and give us your email address, you'll get our emails. So you can find us on Facebook, find our event on Facebook. And hopefully there are flyers that are going around, and I don't know if you have a website where you could post one of your flyers.
I'll post it on the show notes as well. And
great.
Yeah, I'll post it everywhere I can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing, because Asian American church history is something I know zero about. When you mentioned who are our heroes, I couldn't think of a single name.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's someone who is knowledgeable in that, that's amazing. I'm looking forward to that. I think, yeah, I mean, just in general, even like Asian history,
Yeah.
it's something if you grew up in America, you don't really get much exposure to. Like Korean American history for me is something I had to like seek out. Like Korean history, I had to like kind of self teach and like watch YouTube videos to kind of like piece together.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I wouldn't even know where to go for like the Asian American church history. But
Yep.
the fact that we're gonna have an event like that, that's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So I hope we can all, yes, know our stories better and
Yeah.
hear our history.
Yeah.
So
So for both these events, guys, if you didn't jot it down, I'll make sure to put it all in the podcast episode notes. It'll be on the Instagram as well. So if you you can go back to that, refer to that. Irene, thank you so much for coming today. I think the fact that there are people out there trying to unite us and to really be proactive, like you were saying, and not just reactive to the things that are kind of happening to our community. I think that's amazing, and God's gonna do just amazing things through that.
yes, well, thank you for this opportunity to
Yeah.
speak to you and your audience, and I hope to see you and look forward to seeing you on March 27th.
Yeah, we'll definitely be there. Hope you guys will be there too, and I thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time.